Mike, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ryan.
Mike, I want to give you the opportunity. And we were talking about play-by-play voices a couple of minutes ago, and so many of them connect us with the sport that we love because
Yep.
many, many years ago, the television was not the way it is now where every single game is there. And we were talking about the voice of the Auburn Tigers, Rod Bramlett. Did you ever have a chance to get to know Rod at all?
Yeah, we had Rod on a few times, and he was always gracious with his time. He loved Auburn. We had him on for Auburn football, so you could tell his passion for it. And good gracious, to have your life taken away that young it's just horrible. But he was such a gracious guy with us, and a lot of things happening at that particular. I remember one of the first times he was on with us was certainly when with the Cam Newton situation and him trying to sort of break all that down for us and everything else. And so he very, very generous with his time with us throughout the years that he had been, doing this at Auburn, and he loved Auburn Tigers, man. You could tell. Just like, different people do it, for their particular networks. They love it. And so many people today still have that connect, even though TV is still huge. And we do it here at WWL. We have an advertiser for it. Turn down the sound. Listen to Zach and Deuce do the play-by-play of the Saints during Saints games. So it is part of, not only tradition, but I think a lot of part of it, because I think for a lot of fans who maybe either can't afford to go out or choose not to go to a game because of the hassle, if with traffic and everything else and expenses and every other kind of deal you can have with it, they feel as though that hometown person knows it better than somebody who comes in for a day and a half. And, yeah, you see them on TV, but what did they really know about your football team? Or really, what did they know about your baseball team or basketball? I have so many people ask me about Ben McDonald today, because, you see Ben on the SEC network. He's a cut above. I mean, he really does a great job in breaking down baseball in the SEC. And so I think there's still that connection. And Rod was like that with Auburn. When you went to him, he gave it to you on what was happening with Auburn football. And I still think that's done a lot more than people would like to say. TV people don't want to hear it. But my thing is, I would want to hear the radio guy who's around that program, knows the players, knows the coaches better than somebody who comes in for a day and a half. I'm not going to say the coach, but I had a sideline reporter tell me, they're with us. They tell us everything about the game. Everything that we want to know, they tell us about what they're going to do. I asked that coach that, and he laughed at me, and he's like, Mike, this ain't pro wrestling. I'm not going to tell somebody who comes in. I'll give them information to help their broadcast better, but I'm not going to tell them every little thing. Again, I don't know their relationship with another coach, that they would go right back and repeat it. So I'm not, and man, listen, if you're around coaches like I am, they all got one thing in common. They paranoid. Every one of them has that streak of paranoia in them. That, I'm not, man, I ain't telling you, I might tell you a bit in a piece, but I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. That's Pollyanna to believe that, but it is what it is. But Rod, he was just absolutely terrific in his coverage of Auburn football, and those plays that happened there, to run back at a kickoff against a field goal against Alabama, it's sort of etched in your mind, if you're an Auburn fan.
Mike Detillier, WWL 870 out of New Orleans. Mike, I don't want to push you in a corner with a question. I just want to give you the freedom of going where you need to go, because one of the reasons, we love to be able to feature you and pick your brain, but you're a historian of the game of college football. When you think of Bart Starr, kind of connect us with the way that you're connected, and I know you had some great tweets out there and some conversations. Just go where you need to go to help us pay tribute to Bart Starr.
Man, listen, Bart was one of the greatest players of all time, but he was a better human being. You know, he's an unbelievable human being in life. Uh, as a kid, Bart Starr was sort of the first sports star for me, football-wise. I was a little kid, but, you know, my dad would talk about Green Bay Packers football, you know, and it was Lombardi and Starr, and, you know, this star-studded team. But Bart was the glue that kind of held all that together on a team that could have went a lot of different ways. Listen, if you've ever been around a younger Paul Hornung and Jimmy Taylor, man, those guys are some real cut-ups. And, you know, Forrest Gregg was certainly a different personality, but Bart, in an age where television was just starting to put pro football on the map, became such a huge star because of the fact, I think, if you a certain age, into the 60s, baseball was still the number one sport of watch and listen to in America. They had the stars. They had Willie Mays and Henry Aaron and Koufax and Drysdale. And certainly you look at it across the board, Hank Aaron, what he was able to do, McCovey. All those guys and the Cardinals, especially down here in the South, because of radio, I can't tell you how many people that grew up around me would listen to the Cardinals baseball, you know, at that point. And college football was too. Pro football had just sort of entered the scene, especially in the Deep South, because of the fact you got to go back, other than Texas and, you know, sort of what happened with Dallas in 1960 and the Arlos coming into the AFL. It was 66 for Atlanta to get a team, 67 for New Orleans. But we all knew one thing, Bart Starr and the Packers. He was Tom Brady before Brady. And you look at that unprecedented run that what the Packers did to win 3 championships in a row, first 2 Super Bowls. You know, again, the volatility was the coach. He was what stirred the drink. He was the personality. And so you always need the Alka-Seltzer guy. I tell it to people on every team, you need an Alka-Seltzer guy, a guy that'll calm everything down. Bart Starr was that. He was the calm, cool guy. And I think the Ice Bowl sort of cemented his position as that spot of being one of the all-time greats. Under those, unbelievable playing conditions, you behind, and clearly the Cowboys in that game had more talent at that point in time than Green Bay. But they couldn't stop them. You know, it was that generational moment in time. And he was just a great field leader. Under pressure, he was as good as anybody that ever took a snap. And you got to see some of that. Now, again, it's a different world of football back then because it wasn't covered like it is today. You know, you only had 3 networks. And so you're not getting that on a weekly feed or ESPN, Fox, whatever, NBC, CBS, whatever, daily to get that sort of deal. But he was the calm, cool guy. He was the Alka-Seltzer guy. He sort of calmed that football team down. He put it at another level with everything on the line. You couldn't ask for a guy you'd want to take the snap back then other than Starr. And then, you know, once he retired, you know, you knew eventually he would get his chance, that he would be a head coach. And it was funny, one of the first times we had him on, and we had him on a few times because when they would come to Super Bowl, Bart was always part of that until his health started to decline. He was always a big part of it. always gracious with his time. And I asked him about his regret, about, if there's any regret in the game. And he was like, I gave it everything I had. He says, as a player, losing that championship game to the Eagles, the first one they played, and he said the only one we lost. He said that's always in the back of my mind. It was just funny because I think that's like everybody else. You don't remember the high points. You remember the time you lost. And he said, we were so close in that game and losing it to Chuck Bednarik and Van Brocklin. But he said, I just always sort of felt that I let Green Bay down as a head coach because he didn't say we. He said, I didn't do my job as well as I could have. Man, how many guys say that like that today, Ryan? He took full responsibility of that. It wasn't the Packers organization. It wasn't his players or his assistants. He basically put it on his own back that he didn't do as good enough job. And he was great about talking about how that team came together with Lombardi, and that it was that moment in time for Green Bay, and they captured America. And I think a big part of why the success of NFL had a lot to do with you needed something to build around. And the Colts were a very good football team with Unitas, no question. But the AFL was a new league. The Browns, at that point in time, Jimmy Brown had retired to be an actor. So the Packers became the focal point. They became the gold standard in the 60s of what you wanted to be as a professional football team. And Bart playing such a big part of that. But I just thought, he was on with us 3 different times. He was so gracious with his time, loved Alabama football, and really wanted to kind of spur the conversation a little bit toward that, toward Alabama football. Every time we had a conversation with him, even though he talked about the Green Bay Packers, it eventually ended up being, guess what? He talked about Alabama football and the pride and tradition of the University of Alabama. And I know, he took great pride, had to, in what he's seen over the last few years with Nick Saban. And so he's certainly one of the unique players in the NFL. And, when they're going to do that history of 150 years of college football, part of it's going to be about Bart Starr, at Alabama. And, he was a signature player in the Southeast Conference at that particular point in time, despite the fact, everybody will bring up, well, he was a late-round pick. Well, the draft's not what it is today. But he was a remarkable player, a great leader, but an even better human being in life. I mean, he doesn't have to do interviews. He doesn't have to do that sort of thing. And every time we called him until his health declined, he was gracious. He would do it. And would always sort of talk, too, a little bit about Archie. That was his deal about, man, I just wish, Archie could have been on a better football team, better supporting cast around him. And he talked about, that Alabama-Ole Miss game, which, if you're a certain age, and it's one of the first memories I have of college football, of watching that prime time. And Archie dueling it out against Alabama. Alabama ends up winning the game. But it actually put Archie on the map football-wise, and Ole Miss back on the map football-wise. And Bart talked about just what a great player Archie Manning was, a great guy. And so, he lived a super life. And, I just think about his responses to things. He never took credit. He was always, this is a team game. This was all about Coach Lombardi and my teammates. But when he didn't win big enough in Green Bay, he took the blame. Ryan, there ain't a lot of cats walking these streets today that's willing to do that.
Mike, I love that. Because I'm just pulled up at the edge of my seat. I'm listening to it as you connect us with the history of college football and, Bart Starr, a legendary player here at the University of Alabama, and you got other players that are becoming a part of the conversation. That's what we love about this sport. Mike, I want to ask you a couple different things. Can you give me your opinion? Because I went through the weirdest press conference I've ever been in. Mike, about 2 hours ago, Will Wade addressed the media for the very first time, and I'm still like having a hard time describing what I sat through. What's your opinion of that situation with Will Wade and LSU and the – I mean, I'm sitting in this room for 17, 18 minutes, and I've been in this business for 19 years. Weirdest press conference I've ever been in my entire life.
I think Will is just trying to get out of the shark-infested waters.
Is that what it was? Okay. Well, that maybe explains.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to get out of the water at this point in time. Through his own words and actions, and through, a lot of other things that have happened, he's put himself in the limelight now. And my thing about what LSU did was terrible. You should have been one of two things. Either you squat or get off the pot with Will immediately. Either you say, listen, we're going to back you, Will. You're going to be our coach. You're going to take us through this deal, and whatever happens, it happens. Or say, hey, you breached your contract. Hey, we're going to cut you loose. Instead, they put him in basketball purgatory. And so now he's sort of caught. And what are you going to say at that moment in time now? Now that it's all over with. The school put you in a bad situation. You put yourself in a bad situation. And so how are you going to get out of this? I think he's just trying to swim himself out at this point in time. He's trying to get out of the water as fast as he can. And he's been helped a little bit in recent days with a couple guys coming back. But, man, Ryan, it's going to hang over Will. And I think a lot of Will as a coach. I think he's a tremendous coach. I've been around him, got to know him over the last few years. And we haven't seen anything like this, at LSU as a basketball coach in quite some time. Dale Brown was a great recruiter, and I think a terrific salesman for LSU. He had really good coaches around him, and he became the focal point. But Will can really coach, and as we've seen in a short period of time, put LSU back on the basketball map. For some people here in Baton Rouge, no matter what he did, hey, we forgive him. He's back on. He can coach like that. We're willing to take it. But now you got to answer every question. How is Will going to do that? You put yourself in a bad situation here to come out and just start talking about the events that led to the suspension. And there is no book to go to for Will for this. Ryan, can you name another coach that's been in a spot like this?
No, and maybe that's what was so weird about this press conference.
Right. And so he's now in a spot where, man, throughout my years doing this, we've seen coaches accused of doing certain things, and they sort of just want to turn the page, just move on with it. I think Will is trying to do that, but at this point in time, you're not going to be able to. You're going to have to swim out of that water real fast. And so he knows the one guy that wants college basketball season to start quicker than anybody is Will Wade.
Sure.
Because, again, that it takes all the negative of whatever was done, how he was taped, everything else, out of the equation and puts him back on the court, where that's where he feels more comfortable. It's a little bit like Mike Tyson when he was fighting. And toward the end, where there was a lot of distractions, a lot of things going on in Mike's personal life, a lot of things going on with money and everything else around him. But where did he feel more comfortable, most comfortable? In the ring. And I think that's the spot with Will today. I think he feels more comfortable back on the basketball court. But guess what? You got quite a few months now that you're going to be barraged with interview requests. Everywhere you're going to go to talk, everywhere you're going to be seen, people are going to ask you about those incidents. And how do you answer that, so to speak, without putting yourself right back in square one of the spotlight? And do you open the door for the NCAA to come in with an investigation? I think that's the biggest fear, I think, for LSU basketball people, that despite it looks as though he's gotten out of one jam, that it potentially could throw major heat on the LSU basketball program.
Mike, you know it's always a juggle when you go out on location, man.
Tell me about it, brother. Tell me. I've been through those, and so yeah, it's cool. But I just think for Will right now, he's got to fight his way through it if he wants to stay coaching basketball at LSU. He's going to have to fight his way out of this, and it ain't going to be easy.
Hey, Mike, final question. This transfer portal, I mean, when you give a chance, and I'm so glad that we're going to have a chance a little bit later to talk with Coach O. I always think it's, Mike, you ever just do things and like you realize things are stupid even though we keep doing them the same way? Like, let me give you a little bit of, okay, the SEC meetings today started at noon. We talked to like 5 coaches prior to the meeting starting. So how do you, like you don't even know what to ask them about. So because you obviously you don't know what's going on in that meeting, you think you do. But one of the things is we get a chance to talk with coaches later on this week. I think that's when you get the better insight once these meetings have taken place. But the likeness is on the table. It seems like the player transfer conversation here, booze, which is alcohol. I know Ross Dellinger had a big report a couple of days ago,
right,
saying that's going to be front and center at the SEC meetings coming up in the next few hours, next few days. But it's kind of hard to talk about something as the meetings are happening right now and none of us are in that room.
Yeah, I think one thing with the transfer portal, you can almost see the tsunami fixing to hit.
100%.
Where this is, come on, free agency in college sports. It's in front of us. We see the tsunami. It's not that far away anymore. And we're going to have a period where we're going to cover this transfer situation similar to recruiting, where it's going to be the wild, wild west out there with guys coming and going. For some young men who have never sat before, being told that you're not good enough to play right now, to me, they take that as an insult. And so they want out. They want out. And you're going to get a lot of that, Ryan, that, you come in as a 4- and 5-star recruit. Okay, I'm not playing. I redshirted. I'm still struggling as a redshirt freshman. Man, I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere else. You can see that this is going to open up the genie in the bottle like nothing else. And I think, too, a lot of nervousness in camps, especially in the Southeast Conference, about what may happen with the new XFL because of the fact that they have basically said that that 3-year option that is part of the deal in the NFL, it ain't on their books. They can grab whoever they want. And I think that's made a lot of coaches nervous that you may lose a guy after his freshman year to play professional football in the XFL. There's a lot of different things hanging around here. Again, the transfer portal, and I also think the XFL and the uncertainty of all of that has a lot of coaches real nervous today. Now, we all know about the alcohol part, what that's about. Come on, it's money. You want control of that. And they want a bigger piece of the pie on that deal. They want control of that tremendous amount of money. Man, listen, they got places from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. Good gracious, what they make on a weekend for an LSU game, it takes them a month to make. I mean, with
Sure.
alcohol and beer sales. And so, there's a lot of kind of push and shove with all this, extra security in stadiums, because, for some people they can't handle alcohol or beer excessively well. And next thing you know, as a fight, and you got 18, 19, 20-year-olds buying it. So, Ryan, there's a lot of uncertainty with that. But for coaches, I do think that the transfer rule, and I think the impending hit of the XFL I think is in the back of their minds about, man, we don't really know. You walking down the yellow brick road no one's walked down before. Because now the NCAA is much more apt to say, okay, you want to transfer, what's the reason? Okay, I'll set you free. I think the numbers are like over 70% of players that have that asked for immediate transfer have gotten it. So you doing something here that is going to change the game, and to change the game the way we have seen it throughout the last few years, where I think there's always some angst for some players that they're not playing. I'm going to go somewhere else. And what it does to your depth, you lose a couple guys at a certain position, it's going to leave you hanging. And that's, I think, the biggest fear for any coach. He's never worried about having too much. He's always worried about not having enough.
Hey, Mike, in about 30 seconds here, I'm going to see Coach O in a couple of hours, man. I mean, make me look smart, man. What do you think I should walk up and tell him?
I don't know about walk up and tell him, but the one thing I can say is that he's got a couple stud players on that team, and Kaylavon Chason and Grant Delpit on defense that are real game changers. I think the big part of this season is going to be what happens with LSU in their kicking game and offensive line play. Because I think if it gets solved, they'll be in the top 4 if they can solve those issues.
Mike Detillier, WWL 870 out of New Orleans. I always appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for helping us pay tribute to Bart Starr. And appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you, brother.